100 Days of Brexit. Was it as good as the Brexiteers promised, or as bad as Project Fear warned? So, this is the second half of our 100 days since Brexit assessment. For those that never saw the first part, you'll see the links are provided below if you want to watch that. In this part of the update, we'll start with a prediction that the UK government said that GDP would fall. This is a claim that can only be filed in the "it's complicated" column when trying to give a definite answer. The Treasury originally predicted that if we left the EU with a trade deal, GDP would fall between 5 to 8% over a 15-year period. However, in between the time of the referendum and us formally leaving the EU, the Treasury kept changing these beliefs because of the uncertainty surrounded. The Treasury now expects that a temporary near-term disruption to EU and UK goods trade will reduce GDP by 0.5% in the first quarter. And in the last budget, the Treasury said at this point there's no point altering this assumption. But as we've seen, COVID has come along and has totally kicked that into touch because everything sort of changed last March when the markets fell. We're now coming out of that, and only recently the Governor of the Bank of England, the head of Barclays, is saying that they expect the end of 2021 to be the best year for Britain since 1941. So again, that's a complicated scenario to work out what the effects of Brexit will be on that, and we just don't know yet. So we would say at the moment that is definitely a myth to say that leaving the EU would definitely bring down a fall in GDP. Next is a claim that the trade with the EU will be frictionless. We're definitely saying that this is a myth. As you've seen since January, there's been all sorts happening where it isn't frictionless. So despite Boris's claims to the contrary, there are now new non-tariff barriers on significant elements of trade. And if you quote the Office for Budget Responsibility, or the OBR, they said in March of this year that the introduction of non-tariff barriers in services, which accounted for 42% of the UK's exports to the EU in 2019, is far more significant. It is this channel that accounts for much of the long-term reduction in productivity. The OBR predicts that many companies in the service sector will need to set up subsidiaries in the EU to mitigate the impact of non-trade tariff barriers on services. So that there is friction in itself. Having to set up a subsidiary in the EU is clearly not what they were saying back in 2016 or 2017 as to how we would continue after Brexit. So that needs to be looked at, and I'm sure there will be a workaround, but it's not frictionless. But it is true, however, that there are no formal tariffs on trade right now. The next one, it was said that the City of London would be left deserted as a result of big financial institutions disappearing. Again, this is also a myth. You did see some companies like HSBC and others moving their main workforce. They actually went to Birmingham rather than to Paris or Frankfurt. It's still early days in this, so we don't know how those projections and predictions are going to materialise. The biggest thing that's been a problem in London over the last 12 months has obviously been COVID, and I think there's around about 700,000 people who've fled the city, and it'll be interesting to see if they go back once all the COVID restrictions ease. So again, factoring that in with how Brexit's affected is going to be a very, very difficult thing to work out. PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the biggest accounting companies in the world, they predicted that 100,000 financial services jobs will be lost in London. Let's just see how that unfolds, because so far we believe there's only around about 8,000 finance jobs that have moved to the EU. The UK and the EU agreement about financial services needs to be looked at. It was something that was kind of sketched over when the deal was done at the end of December going into January. So we really need to see what the services deal is going to look like when that's eventually agreed and mapped out to people. So perhaps the biggest claim, the most outlandish one, which seemed stupid at the time, was where they claimed leaving the EU would save us money to the tune of £350 million a week to put into the NHS. Again, this is another one that we have to say it's complicated. We certainly haven't seen that money become available and directly put into the NHS. Again, put that caveat in that COVID came along and we're spending far more on the NHS now than was probably anticipated over a year ago. The UK did say that it planned to boost its NHS spending by £394 million a week from 2023. Anyway, that was said in 2018. Whether that money's come from what's been saved by the EU, you just don't know yet. As I say, it was one of those claims at the beginning that I'm pretty confident to say was just an absolute myth that was used to sort of try and gain votes at that point. It should be remembered, however, that the UK will still need to send £20 billion a year to the EU over the next 7 years as part of the divorce settlement. So £350 million a week for the NHS, massive myth. The next claim was that the UK would lose favourable access to markets with EU trade agreements. Again, this has turned out to be a myth. The EU had about 40 trade deals covering more than 70 countries at the time the UK left. The UK has since made deals to continue trading in the same way with 63 of these countries. 4 of the remaining countries are due to start agreements this year, and the other 4 are in discussion. So again, that's not as bad as we were led to believe by the Remainers, who said as a result of leaving the EU, we would be cast adrift and would be an island just there, not having any trade agreements. You heard some people saying it's going to take 10, 15 years to get a lot of these trade agreements signed, but we're virtually there with all of them. One of the Leave camp's main economic arguments for going our own way was that the UK would be able to gain improved access to more global markets. Hopefully this comes off. As I say, you've got to say the jury's still out on this one because we are still negotiating them. But I'm very keen and positive as to what we're seeing going on with that. The UK signed a deal with Japan on the 22nd of October, the first that really differed from an existing EU deal. And the total value of the UK-Japan trade imports and exports was 31.6 billion in 2019, which is around about 2% of the UK's total trade. The estimated booster trade between the UK and Japan on this is estimated to be an additional 15 billion. So that's increasing that by almost 50% from where we were in 2019. On the 31st of January, the UK government also announced it would apply to join a free trade area with 11 Asia and Pacific nations called the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement. It's a bit of a mouthful, for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP. So again, we've got to say that this is very, very positive, and we're going to you're going to see our government try to create more of these trade agreements. The EU don't like that, and as I say, that's why I think they are starting to play hardball in certain other areas, because they wanted their other member states not to feel that as a result of the UK leaving this central block, that it would benefit thereafter. And obviously what our government needs to do is make sure that we do start to benefit. Get COVID behind us, get the lockdown restrictions eased, get the economy booming at the end of the year, and then only then we'll probably see whether Brexit was a positive or negative to our economy overall. Thanks for listening, and we'll keep you updated with more informative updates like this as time goes on.